The dusty horizon swallowed the setting sun as Levi Sawyer guided his exhausted palomino along the shallow banks of the Sweetwater River. Wyoming Territory, 1878, a land where fortunes were made and lost with the changing winds, and where a man could disappear if he wanted to. Levi wasn't looking to disappear, but he wasn't exactly eager to be found either, not after what happened in Silver Reef, Utah. The river whispered secrets as it flowed past, and Levi might have missed her entirely if not for the soft moan carried on the evening breeze. He pulled his horse to a stop, hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at his hip. His eyes scanned the riverbank until they fell upon a crumpled form half hidden among the reeds. "Hello," he called out, dismounting with practiced ease. His boots sank slightly into the damp earth as he approached. "You all right there?" The figure stirred, and Levi's breath caught in his throat. A woman young, maybe 20 or so, lay there, her face marred with bruises, her simple calico dress torn and mudded. Her dark hair hung in tangled waves around shoulders that trembled with either cold or fear, possibly both. "Don't," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the river's flow. "Please, just go." Levi crouched beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Madam, you're hurt. I can't just ride away and leave you here." When she turned her face to him fully, the dying sunlight revealed the extent of her injuries: a swollen eye, a cut lip, and a bruise that spread across her cheek like a thundercloud. But it wasn't just her face that gave Levi pause. It was the gentle swell of her abdomen, visible even beneath her mudded dress. "I'm with child," she said, noticing his gaze. "And I'm begging you, mister, just ride on. Forget you ever saw me." Something in Levi's chest constricted. "I can't do that." "You must," she insisted, a desperate edge to her voice. "He'll find me. He always does." Levi straightened up, looking around at the darkening landscape. "Who will find you?" The woman clutched at her side, wincing. "My husband. Please, if you have any mercy, you'll leave me be." "He'll kill you too if he thinks you've helped me." "My name's Levi Sawyer," he said instead of leaving, "and I don't scare easy, madam." "Cassandra," she whispered after a long pause. "Cassandra Griffin, though it won't matter much when he catches up to us." "Well, Miss Griffin, Mrs.," she corrected, then laughed bitterly. "Though I wish to God I wasn't." Levi nodded, understanding dawning. "Mrs. Griffin, I've got a camp set up just over that ridge. It's not much, but there's a fire and some food. You can rest there while I figure out what to do next." "You're not listening," Cassandra said, tears welling in her eyes. "I've tried running before, 3 times. He always finds me, and it's always worse when he does." Levi extended his hand. "4th time might be the charm." She stared at his outstretched palm like it was a rattlesnake poised to strike. "You don't understand what kind of man he is." "I understand what kind of man leaves his wife looking like this," Levi replied, his voice hardening. "And I understand what kind of man I am. I'm not leaving you here." A twig snapped somewhere in the distance, and Cassandra flinched violently. "He's coming," she whispered, terror flooding her features. Levi helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as she swayed unsteadily. "Can you ride?" "Yes, but—" "No buts," Levi interrupted, leading her to his horse. "We're getting you out of here, and we're doing it now." With gentle hands, he helped her onto the saddle, noting how she winced with every movement. The growing darkness would hide their tracks, at least for a while. Levi grabbed the reins and led the palomino away from the river, away from whatever demon pursued this broken woman. "I can make it to Silver City by tomorrow," Levi said as they moved through the gathering shadows. "There's a doctor there, a good one." Cassandra's hands clutched the saddle horn, her knuckles white. "He has friends in Silver City." "Then we'll go somewhere else," Levi said simply. "Wyoming's a big territory." They made camp in a small hollow sheltered by pine trees. far enough from any trail that the small fire Levi built wouldn't attract attention. He helped Cassandra down from the horse and settled her on his bedroll near the flames. "I don't have much," he admitted, pulling jerky and hardtack from his saddlebags. "But it's yours if you want it." Cassandra accepted the food with shaking hands. "Why are you doing this?" Levi busied himself with tending the fire. "My ma raised me to help folks in need." "Your ma would tell you to stay clear of other men's wives," Cassandra countered, but there was no conviction in her voice. "My ma would box my ears if I left any woman alone and hurt by a riverbank," Levi replied. He paused, watching as she nibbled at the jerky. "How far along are you?" Cassandra's free hand moved protectively to her belly. 5 months or so. And your husband, he did this to you knowing you're carrying his child." A shadow passed over her face. "That's partly why he did it. He claims it isn't his." Levi's jaw tightened. "Is it?" "Of course it is," Cassandra said, a flash of indignation cutting through her fear. "I've never been with another man. Thomas he drinks, and when he drinks he gets ideas." "Thomas Griffin," Levi said, committing the name to memory. "What's he look like?" Cassandra shook her head. "Don't. Please don't ask that. I don't want you thinking about finding him or confronting him. He's dangerous, Mr. Sawyer." "Levi," he corrected. "And I'm just asking so I know who to avoid." She didn't believe him, he could see it in her eyes, but she was too exhausted to argue. "He's tall." "Taller than you. Dark beard streaked with gray. Has a scar across his right cheek from a knife fight in Denver. Wears a silver watch chain with a wolf's head charm." Levi nodded, filing away these details. "You should rest, Mrs. Griffin." "Cassie," she said quietly. "No one's called me Mrs. Griffin but the preacher who married us and the doctor who stitched me up the first time." "Cassie," Levi repeated, the name feeling right on his tongue. "Sleep. I'll keep watch." She curled up on the bedroll, one hand still protectively cradling her belly. "He'll kill us both if he finds us," she murmured as her eyes drifted closed. "He'll have to get through me first," Levi said softly, but Cassie had already fallen into an exhausted sleep. Levi watched her for a long moment, taking in the bruises that stood out starkly against her pale skin, even in the firelight. Rage simmered in his gut, but he tamped it down. Right now, Cassie needed safety more than she needed vengeance. He settled back against a tree trunk, his Winchester rifle across his lap, and prepared for a long night. Morning brought with it a fine mist that clung to the pine needles and dampened the ground. Levi had dozed off just before dawn, his chin dropping to his chest despite his best efforts. He woke with a start, hand immediately going to his gun, but the clearing was peaceful. Cassie still slept, her breathing even and deep. Levi rose quietly and rekindled the fire, then set about making coffee. The familiar ritual calmed him, giving him time to think. They couldn't go to Silver City if Thomas Griffin had connections there. Cheyenne was too far with Cassie in her condition. Laramie might be an option, but it was still a hard ride. "You're still here," Cassie's voice startled him from his thoughts. He turned to find her sitting up, her dark hair falling in tangled waves around her shoulders. In the clear light of morning, the bruises on her face seemed even more stark and cruel. "Did you think I'd leave in the night?" Levi asked, pouring coffee into a tin cup. "I wouldn't have blamed you if you had," she replied, accepting the cup with a grateful nod. "Most men would have." "I'm not most men," Levi said simply. Cassie studied him over the rim of her cup. "No, I don't suppose you are." She winced as she shifted position. "We need to keep moving. Thomas will have noticed I'm gone by now." "How far behind us do you think he is?" "A day, maybe less," Cassie said. "He'll have been drinking, so he might not have realized I was gone until morning, but once he does." Levi nodded, already packing up their meager camp. "Can you tell me what happened? How you ended up by that river?" Cassie's hands trembled slightly, sloshing coffee over the rim of her cup. "We were traveling to Fort Laramie. Thomas has had a job waiting there. We made camp by the river and he started drinking. He always gets mean when he drinks, but this time was worse." She touched her swollen eye gingerly. "He accused me of carrying another man's child, said I'd shamed him. He hit me, and when I fell, he kept hitting me. I thought he was going to kill me right there." "How'd you get away?" Levi asked, his voice gentle. "He passed out eventually. I grabbed what I could and ran, but I didn't get far before I collapsed. That's when you found me." Levi helped her to her feet. "We'll head north. I know a place where we can lie low for a while, at least until you're stronger." "And then what?" Cassie asked, her eyes searching his face. "I can't run forever, Levi, not like this." Her hand went to her belly. "First things first," Levi said, helping her onto the horse. "Let's get somewhere safe, then we'll figure out the rest." They rode north throughout the day, Levi walking beside the horse to spare the animal from carrying double weight. Cassie dozed in the saddle, exhaustion and pain taking their toll. By late afternoon, they reached a small creek, and Levi called a halt. "We'll rest here for a bit," he said, helping Cassie down. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been trampled by a buffalo," she admitted with a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But I'm still here." Levi led the horse to drink, keeping one eye on Cassie as she lowered herself carefully to sit on a fallen log. There was something about her that tugged at him, a quiet strength beneath the fear and pain. He'd known her less than a day, yet already felt responsible for her in a way that went beyond simple decency. "You never said what you were doing out here on your own," Cassie said as he returned to her side. Levi hesitated. "Just drifting." "I left Silver Reef a few months back, been working my way east since then." "Running from something?" she asked perceptively. "Not running," Levi corrected. "Just moving on," Cassie nodded, not pressing further. "I've never been to Silver Reef. I hear it's beautiful with those red cliffs." "It is," Levi agreed, "or was when I left. It's a silver mining town growing fast, too fast maybe." "Is that why you left? Too many people?" Levi's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Something like that." Before Cassie could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached them. Levi's hand went to his gun as he scanned the horizon. "It might not be him," Cassie whispered, but the terror in her eyes said she didn't believe it. "Get behind that outcropping," Levi instructed, already moving to retrieve his rifle from the saddle. "Stay down and stay quiet." Cassie obeyed, moving as quickly as her injured body would allow. Levi positioned himself where he could see the approach without being immediately visible, his rifle at the ready. The rider appeared over a rise, a lone man on a dark horse, moving at a steady trot. Even from a distance, Levi could make out the broad shoulders and full beard Cassie had described. The silver watch chain glinted in the afternoon sun. Thomas Griffin had found them. Levi's finger tensed on the trigger, but he forced himself to wait. Shooting a man in cold blood, no matter how deserving, wasn't something he could do. Not anymore. Griffin reined his horse to a stop, scanning the area with sharp eyes. "I know you're out there, Cassie," he called, his voice carrying across the open ground. "You might as well show yourself. You know I'll find you eventually." Levi remained motionless, watching as Griffin dismounted and drew his gun. "And to the hero who thought he could steal my wife," Griffin continued, his tone deceptively conversational, "I'll make it quick if you show yourself now. Otherwise." He fired a shot into the air. "Well, I've got plenty of ammunition and all the time in the world." Levi glanced toward Cassie's hiding place. She was barely visible, crouched behind the rocks, her face a mask of terror. He made his decision. Stepping out from his position, rifle aimed squarely at Griffin's chest, Levi called out, "That's far enough, Griffin." The larger man turned, a slow smile spreading beneath his beard. Well, well, aren't you the gallant one? His eyes narrowed as he took in Levi's stance. You got a name, hero. Doesn't matter what my name is, Levi replied evenly. What matters is you're going to turn around and ride away. Your wife doesn't want to see you. Griffin laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the rocks. My wife? Is that what she told you she is? He spat on the ground. That whore is carrying another man's bastard. I'm just here to collect what's mine and deal with her as a husband should. She's not going anywhere with you, Levi said, his finger tightening on the trigger. Not after what you did to her. Cassie, Griffin called out, ignoring Levi's rifle. Come out now and maybe I'll let your new friend live. She's not here, Levi lied. I sent her ahead while I dealt with you. Griffin's smile faded. You're lying. He raised his gun. I'm going to count to 3 and then I'm going to start shooting. 1, a gunshot cracked through the air and Griffin staggered back, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers as he stared at Levi in shock. The next one goes through your heart, Levi warned, already re-aiming. Get on your horse and ride away. Don't come back. Griffin's face contorted with rage. You think this is over? He snarled. I'll find you both. I'll kill you slow and then I'll take her back. And another shot rang out and Griffin collapsed to his knees, blood blooming across his chest. But this time, Levi hadn't fired. Cassie stood a few yards away, Levi's Colt revolver trembling in her hands, smoke still curling from the barrel. Her face was a frozen mask of determination and horror. Cassie, Griffin gasped, reaching toward her with a bloodied hand. No more, she whispered. No more, Thomas. Griffin pitched forward onto the ground and lay still. Levi rushed to Cassie's side, gently taking the revolver from her unresisting hands. Are you all right? She stared at her husband's motionless form, her expression unreadable. Is he dead? Levi approached Griffin cautiously, kneeling to check for a pulse. After a moment, he nodded. He's gone. A sob escaped Cassie's throat, whether of relief or grief or both. Levi couldn't tell. He returned to her side, carefully avoiding touching her, giving her the space to process what had just happened. I didn't mean to, she said, her voice hollow. I just couldn't let him hurt anyone else. I couldn't let him hurt you. You did what you had to do, Levi said softly. He would have killed us both. Cassie's legs gave out and she sank to the ground, her whole body shaking. Levi knelt beside her, offering his presence without demanding anything. What happens now? She asked after a long silence. We bury him, Levi said simply. Then we keep moving. They'll hang me when they find out, Cassie said, her hand moving instinctively to her belly. They'll say I murdered my husband. No one's going to find out, Levi assured her. This was self-defense, plain and simple, but just to be safe, we'll head somewhere new. Somewhere no one knows either of us. Cassie looked up at him, her eyes red-rimmed but dry now. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Levi didn't have a simple answer for that. He hadn't planned on getting involved in someone else's troubles. He'd been drifting purposefully away from entanglements since leaving Silver Reef. Yet here he was, standing over a dead man with a pregnant widow who just saved his life. Let's just say I know what it's like to need a second chance, he finally replied. They buried Thomas Griffin beneath a stand of cottonwoods, marking the grave with a pile of stones. Cassie stood silently throughout, her face impassive as Levi worked. When he finished, she placed a single wildflower atop the cairn. I loved him once, she said quietly. Before the drinking got bad, before he started using his fists instead of words. Levi nodded, understanding the complex emotions that must be churning within her. We should get moving. There's a small settlement about a day's ride from here. We can get supplies, maybe find a doctor to look at your injuries. What will we tell people? Cassie asked as Levi helped her back onto the horse. The truth, more or less, Levi said, gathering the reins. You're a widow traveling with a friend. No need for details beyond that. They traveled until dusk, making camp in a sheltered valley where a small spring provided fresh water. Levi hunted and returned with a pair of rabbits, which he skinned and roasted over their fire. Cassie watched him work, her eyes following his movements. "You're good at this," she observed. "Living rough, I mean," Levi shrugged. "Been on my own a while. You learn fast or go hungry." "Were you always alone?" she asked, accepting a portion of the cooked meat. "No," Levi said after a moment. "I had a wife once, Sarah. She died in childbirth 3 years ago, the baby too." Cassie's expression softened with sympathy. "I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago," Levi said, though the pain in his eyes suggested otherwise. "Is that why you left Silver Reef?" Levi poked at the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise into the darkening sky. "Partly. Everything there reminded me of her. And then there was trouble at the mine where I worked, a cave-in. Men died who shouldn't have, all because the owner was cutting corners." "What happened?" Cassie asked. "I confronted him," Levi said, his voice flat. "It got physical. He fell and hit his head. For a while they thought he might die, but he pulled through. His brother's the sheriff, though, so I figured it was best to move on before they decided to hang me anyway." Cassie was quiet for a long moment. "Seems we're both running from something." "Were," Levi corrected gently. "You don't have to run anymore, Cassie." She looked at him across the fire, the flames casting her face in a warm glow that softened the bruises. "What happens when we reach this settlement? We go our separate ways." The question hung in the air between them. Levi hadn't thought that far ahead. His plan had been simple: get Cassie somewhere safe, make sure she had what she needed, and then— "What? Continue his aimless wandering? I don't know," he admitted. "I hadn't planned that far." "I have nowhere to go," Cassie said softly. "No family, no money, and with the baby coming." She trailed off, leaving the rest unspoken. "I'm not going to abandon you," Levi assured her. "We'll figure something out." Cassie nodded, but uncertainty lingered in her eyes. They finished their meal in companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. As the fire burned down to embers, Levi again insisted Cassie take the bedroll while he kept watch. "You need to sleep too," she protested. "I will," Levi promised. "Just not yet." Cassie settled onto the bedroll, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Levi watched as she drifted off to sleep, her breathing growing deep and even. The weight of responsibility settled more firmly on his shoulders, but strangely, it didn't feel like a burden. There was something about Cassie, her quiet strength, her resilience in the face of cruelty, that stirred something in him he'd thought long dead. Morning broke clear and cool, with a light breeze rustling the prairie grass. Levi woke to find Cassie already up, attempting to rebuild the fire. "You should have woken me," he said, rising quickly to help her. "You needed the rest," she replied. "Besides, I'm not completely helpless." Levi smiled. "I never thought you were." They ate a simple breakfast of the remaining rabbit and set out just as the sun cleared the eastern horizon. Cassie seemed stronger today, sitting straighter in the saddle, her eyes more alert as they scanned the landscape. "Tell me about this settlement," she said as they rode. "Have you been there before?" "Once, about a month ago," Levi replied. "It's called Willow Creek. Small place, mostly ranchers and a few miners. They've got a general store, a saloon, and a doctor who doubles as a barber. And they don't know you there." "I passed through for a night," Levi said. "Doubt anyone would remember me." Cassie nodded, seemingly satisfied. "What will we say if anyone asks? About us?" The question caught Levi off guard. "I suppose we'll say I'm escorting you to wherever it is you're going." "And where am I going?" Cassie asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Levi considered this. "Where do you want to go?" Cassie's hand moved to her belly, a gesture that was becoming familiar to Levi. Somewhere my child can grow up safe, somewhere we can start over. She paused. Somewhere like Silver Reef, maybe. Levi looked at her sharply. Silver Reef. You said it was beautiful, Cassie reminded him. And it's far from here, far from everything that's happened. It is, Levi agreed cautiously, but I can't go back there. Because of the mine owner, Cassie pressed. Yes. Did he deserve what happened to him? Levi's jaw tightened. Yes. But that doesn't change the fact that his brother would see me hang. Cassie fell silent, considering this. Then somewhere else, she finally said. Somewhere new for both of us. The idea planted a seed in Levi's mind, somewhere new. A fresh start. Not just for Cassie and her child, but for him too. He'd been drifting for so long, moving without purpose. Maybe it was time to stop running and start building something again. They reached Willow Creek by mid-afternoon. The settlement was just as Levi had described, a handful of buildings clustered along a dusty main street, with scattered homesteads visible in the distance. They drew curious glances as they rode in, Levi leading the horse with Cassie perched side saddle, her bruised face partially hidden by a bandana he'd given her. The doctor, a grizzled man named Pearson, clucked his tongue disapprovingly when he saw Cassie's injuries. Fell from a horse, did you? He asked skeptically as he examined her ribs. Something like that, Cassie murmured. Pearson's eyes flicked to Levi, who stood by the door, his posture tense. And you are? A friend, Levi replied evenly. I found her on the trail. Pearson seemed to accept this, or at least decided not to press further. Well, you've got 2 cracked ribs, a nasty collection of bruises, and what looks like a sprained wrist. But the baby seems fine, strong heartbeat. Relief washed over Cassie's face. You're sure? As sure as I can be, Pearson confirmed. But you need rest, good food, and no more falling from horses. He bound her ribs tightly and gave her a bottle of laudanum for the pain. Use it sparingly, he warned. Not good for the baby to have too much. They took a room at the small boarding house, the only one in town, with Levi explaining to the curious proprietress that he was escorting his widowed sister-in-law to California. Poor dear, the woman, Mrs. Holden, said sympathetically. Losing your husband and in your condition too. How far along are you? 5 months, Cassie replied, playing her part perfectly. My brother-in-law has been very kind to accompany me. Family should stick together, Mrs. Holden said approvingly, especially in times of trouble. The room was small but clean, with a single bed and a chair beside a window that overlooked the main street. Levi insisted Cassie take the bed while he would sleep on a pallet on the floor. I'll get some supplies while you rest, he said after helping her settle. Is there anything specific you need? Cassie hesitated. Some fabric maybe, and thread. I'd like to make something for the baby. Levi nodded, oddly touched by the request. I'll see what they have at the general store. As he walked down the dusty street toward the store, Levi found himself thinking about the future in a way he hadn't for years. Cassie needed stability, a safe place to have her baby and raise it. And if he was honest with himself, he was tired of drifting, tired of being alone. The general store was well stocked for such a small settlement. Levi purchased basic supplies, food, ammunition, a new shirt for himself, and the fabric and thread Cassie had requested. The storekeeper, a talkative man named Wilson, eyed the fabric curiously. For the missus? He asked with a friendly smile. For my sister-in-law, Levi corrected. She's expecting. Wilson nodded knowingly. Saw you ride in with her. Looked like she'd had a rough time of it. The trail's been hard, Levi said, offering no further explanation. Where you folks headed? Wilson asked as he wrapped the purchases. California, eventually, Levi replied, sticking to their story. Taking our time, though. My sister-in-law needs to regain her strength before we continue. Wise, Wilson agreed. No sense rushing when there's a little one on the way. He hesitated, then added, if you're looking to stay a while, Jensen's ranch is hiring. Good pay from what I hear. Levi considered this. They needed money, and a ranch job would provide that and possibly lodging as well. Where's this ranch? About 5 miles west, Wilson said. Can't miss it. Big spread, white fence around the main house. Mr. Jensen's fair. Tough but fair. Levi thanked him for the information and headed back to the boarding house, his mind turning over this new possibility. He found Cassie sitting by the window, gazing out at the street below. She turned as he entered, a small smile lighting her face despite the bruises. You were gone a while, she said. I was starting to worry. Got talking with the storekeeper, Levi explained, setting down his purchases. He mentioned there's ranch work available nearby. Cassie's smile faded slightly. Oh, you're thinking of taking it. We need money, Levi pointed out gently, and a place to stay until. He trailed off, unsure how to finish. Until the baby comes, Cassie supplied. And then what, Levi? You ride off and I do what? Become a laundress. A saloon girl, the bitterness in her tone surprised him. That's not what I meant. Cassie sighed, her hand moving instinctively to her belly. I'm sorry, I'm just scared. I've never been on my own, not really. I went from my father's house to Thomas's. Levi sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. You're not on your own, Cassie. I promised I wouldn't abandon you, and I meant it. But you can't stay with me forever, she said softly. You have your own life to live. Levi was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words carefully. What if our lives went in the same direction? Cassie looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I'm not proposing marriage, Levi said quickly, seeing the alarm in her eyes. I wouldn't presume. It's just I've been thinking. Neither of us has anywhere specific to go. We both need a fresh start. Maybe we could help each other. As what? Partners? Cassie asked, confusion evident in her voice. Friends, at least, Levi said. I take this ranch job, save some money. We find a real place, not just a room in a boarding house where you and the baby can be safe, where we can both start over. Cassie studied his face, searching for something sincerity perhaps, or hidden motives. Why would you do that for me? For us? Her hand rested protectively over her unborn child. Because I've been alone for a long time, Levi admitted. And because I think you're someone worth helping, Cassie. I think maybe we were supposed to meet by that river. Tears welled in Cassie's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it, Levi replied. That's all I'm asking for now. Cassie wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. I'll consider it. The next morning, Levi rode out to the Jensen ranch while Cassie rested at the boarding house. The ranch was indeed impressive, a sprawling operation with dozens of men working cattle across the rolling grasslands. The main house stood on a gentle rise, a 2-story structure with a wide porch, and as Wilson had mentioned, a pristine white fence surrounding it. Frank Jensen was a bear of a man with a booming voice and calloused hands that spoke of years of hard work despite his current prosperity. He looked Levi up and down with shrewd eyes. You've worked cattle before? He asked after Levi introduced himself and stated his business. Yes, sir, Levi replied. In Texas and later in Utah. What brings you to Wyoming? Jensen asked, his tone casual but his eyes watchful. Levi stuck to the story he and Cassie had agreed upon. Escorting my sister-in-law to California. Her husband, my brother, passed recently and she's expecting. We're taking it slow on account of her condition. Jensen nodded thoughtfully. Sorry for your loss. Where's the lady staying now? At the boarding house in town, Levi said. I was hoping to find work that might include lodging for both of us. Jensen stroked his chin. As it happens, I've got a small cabin about a quarter mile from here. Used to be the foreman's place before we built him a bigger one. It's not much, but it's solid. Might suit your needs while you're here." Hope flared in Levi's chest. "That would be more than fair, Mr. Jensen." "Wage is $40 a month plus the cabin," Jensen said. "Expect you from sunup to sundown 6 days a week. Sundays are your own." "When can I start?" Levi asked. Jensen's weathered face cracked into a smile. "How about tomorrow?" "Give you time to get settled in the cabin with your sister-in-law." Levi returned to Willow Creek with the good news, finding Cassie exactly where he'd left her, by the window with the fabric he'd bought spread across her lap. She was carefully cutting a pattern, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked up as he entered, her face brightening. "How did it go?" "I got the job," Levi said, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. $40 a month, and there's a cabin we can use." "It's small," Jensen said, "but it's ours as long as I work there." "A cabin," Cassie repeated, setting aside her sewing. "With real walls and a roof," Levi laughed at her enthusiasm. "That's generally what a cabin has, yes." "When can we see it?" she asked, already gathering her few possessions. "Now, if you're up to the ride," Levi replied. Jensen said we can move in right away. The cabin was indeed small, just one room with a stone fireplace at one end, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, and a narrow bed pushed against the far wall. A lean-to at the back housed a small cook stove, and a pump outside provided fresh water. But it was clean and solid, with a patched roof and tight-fitting windows that would keep out the wind and rain. Cassie walked slowly around the space, her fingers trailing over the simple furniture. "It's perfect," she whispered. Levi watched her from the doorway, relieved by her reaction. "It's not much. It's more than I ever had with Thomas," Cassie said, turning to face him. "It's ours." The simple phrase sent a warmth spreading through Levi's chest. He cleared his throat. "I'll make up a pallet for myself over here by the fire." Cassie's face fell slightly. "Oh. Of course, I didn't mean to assume." She gestured vaguely at the single bed. "It's fine," Levi assured her quickly. "I've slept in worse places." An awkward silence fell between them, broken only when Levi suggested he should go meet the rest of the ranch hands and see what his duties would be starting tomorrow. The next weeks fell into a pattern. Levi rose before dawn and worked until dusk with the other ranch hands, learning the layout of Jensen's vast property and the rhythms of ranch life. Cassie kept the cabin, cooking and cleaning as her strength returned. Her bruises faded, and the constant fear that had shadowed her eyes began to recede. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, Cassie sewing baby clothes or mending Levi's worn shirts, while he whittled or simply rested from the day's labor. They talked about their pasts, their dreams, the future they were both trying to envision. Levi told her about Silver Reef, about the red cliffs and the bustling streets, about the small house he'd built for Sarah and their future family. "You ever think about going back?" Cassie asked one evening as she stitched a tiny gown. Levi paused in his whittling, considering the question. "Sometimes. I miss the mountains, the way the light changes the color of the cliffs throughout the day. But not enough to risk facing the sheriff," Cassie observed. "It's not just that," Levi admitted. "There are ghosts there for me. Sarah, the baby we never got to meet." He looked up at her. "What about you? Is there anywhere you miss?" Cassie shook her head. "I never stayed anywhere long enough to miss it." Thomas was always chasing the next opportunity, the next big strike. She set down her sewing, her hand resting on her now prominent belly. "I want that to be different for this little one. I want them to have a home, a real home." "They will," Levi promised. As the weeks passed, Levi found himself watching Cassie more and more, noticing the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the graceful movement of her hands as she worked, the quiet strength that seemed to grow in her daily. Her pregnancy advanced, her belly swelling as the baby grew, and Levi was struck by how beautiful she was, even or perhaps especially in this state of impending motherhood. He tried to dismiss these thoughts. Cassie had just escaped a violent marriage, was still grieving and healing in her own way. The last thing she needed was another man imposing his feelings on her. Besides, they were building something fragile here: trust, friendship, a sense of safety. He wouldn't risk that for anything. But sometimes he caught Cassie watching him too, a warmth in her eyes that made his heart beat faster. And sometimes, in the quiet evenings by the fire, the space between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. One Sunday, their day off, Levi suggested they ride into town for supplies and perhaps a proper meal at the small cafe that had recently opened. Cassie, now nearly 7 months along, agreed eagerly, tired of the confines of the small cabin. Willow Creek had grown in the weeks they'd been at Jensen's ranch. New buildings were going up, and the streets were busier with wagons and riders. They drew curious looks as they made their way to the cafe, Levi walking protectively beside Cassie, whose condition was now impossible to hide. "Mrs. Sawyer," Mrs. Holden called out as they passed the boarding house. "How lovely to see you looking so well." Cassie tensed beside him, and Levi realized with a jolt that Mrs. Holden had misunderstood their relationship. Before he could correct her, Cassie smiled warmly. "Thank you, Mrs. Holden. We're quite comfortable out at the Jensen place." Mrs. Holden beamed at them. "I'm so glad to hear it." "And when is the little one due?" "About 2 months now," Cassie replied, her hand resting on her belly. "Well, you simply must let me know when the time comes," Mrs. Holden insisted. "I've helped bring many babies into this world." They promised they would and continued on to the cafe, neither mentioning Mrs. Holden's assumption about their relationship. The cafe was small but clean, with checkered tablecloths and fresh wildflowers in jam jars on each table. They were seated by a window, and Cassie sighed contentedly as she settled into her chair. "This is nice," she said, looking around at the simple but charming surroundings. "Almost like being normal people with normal lives." Levi smiled. "Isn't that what we are? Normal people having lunch." "You know what I mean," Cassie replied, but returned his smile. "People who aren't running from something, people who belong somewhere." "We belong at the cabin," Levi said, surprised by how true it felt. "For now, at least." "For now," Cassie agreed, a shadow passing over her face. "But the baby will come, and then we'll figure out the next step," Levi finished for her. "Together." The waitress brought them coffee and took their orders: beefsteak for Levi, chicken, and dumplings for Cassie. As they waited for their food, Levi noticed a stranger at the counter watching them with unusual interest. A tall man with a neatly trimmed mustache and city clothes that stood out among the typical frontier attire of the other patrons. Cassie noticed Levi's distraction. "What is it?" she asked, tensing slightly. "Probably nothing," Levi assured her, but he kept the stranger in his peripheral vision. Their food arrived, and they ate with appreciation, the home-cooked meal a welcome change from their own limited culinary efforts. Cassie was just finishing her dumplings when the stranger approached their table. "Excuse me," he said, his accent marking him as Eastern, perhaps Boston. "I couldn't help but notice the lady's condition. I'm Dr. Andrew Mitchell, recently arrived from Massachusetts. I've taken over Dr. Pearson's practice. He's retired to Denver to be with his daughter." Levi relaxed slightly but remained wary. "Nice to meet you, Doctor. I'm Levi Sawyer, and this is Cassie." He hesitated, then continued, "Cassie Sawyer." Dr. Mitchell smiled pleasantly. "Mrs. Sawyer, I'd be happy to check on you as your time approaches. Willow Creek is growing, but we're still short on medical services for expectant mothers." Cassie glanced at Levi, who gave a slight nod. "That's very kind of you, Doctor. We're staying at the Jensen Ranch about 5 miles west of town." "I know it," Dr. Mitchell replied. "I ride out that way weekly to check on Mrs. Peterson's rheumatism. I could stop by your place as well." They agreed to this arrangement, and Dr. Mitchell excused himself to return to his meal. As he walked away, Cassie let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was kind of him," she said. Levi nodded, still watching the doctor. "Yes, it was." He looked back at Cassie. "I hope you don't mind that I introduced you as Cassie Sawyer. It seemed simpler." "It is simpler," Cassie agreed. "And safer." She hesitated, then added softly, "I don't mind being Cassie Sawyer. It's a good name." Something in her tone made Levi's heart skip a beat. He reached across the table and took her hand, a gesture more intimate than any they'd shared before. "It suits you," he said simply. They held each other's gaze for a long moment until the waitress came to clear their plates, breaking the spell. But something had shifted between them. A door had opened that neither seemed eager to close again. The ride back to the cabin was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. As Levi helped Cassie down from the horse, his hands lingered at her waist longer than necessary, and she didn't pull away. That night, as they sat by the fire, the silence between them was charged with unspoken words. Finally, Cassie set aside her sewing and looked directly at Levi. "Mrs. Holden thinks we're married," she said. "And now Dr. Mitchell does too." Levi nodded, unsure where she was going with this. "It's easier that way. Fewer questions." "Yes," Cassie agreed. "But it's not just that, is it? It's safer for me, for the baby, if people think I have a husband." "Cassie, let me finish," she interrupted gently. "I've been thinking about this for a while now, about us, about the future. When Thomas died, I thought I'd never want to be anyone's wife again. The very idea of it terrified me." She took a deep breath. "But you're not Thomas. You're nothing like him." Levi's heart hammered in his chest. "What are you saying, Cassie?" "I'm saying that I care for you, Levi," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I'm saying that these past weeks in this cabin with you have been the happiest of my life, despite everything. I'm saying that I don't want it to end when the baby comes." "It doesn't have to," Levi said, moving to kneel beside her chair. "Cassie, he faltered, the words catching in his throat. Cassie reached out, touching his cheek gently. "You don't have to say anything now. I just wanted you to know how I feel, what I hope for." Levi caught her hand, pressing it more firmly against his face. "I do have to say it. I've been wanting to say it for weeks." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Cassie. I think I've loved you since I found you by that river." Tears welled in Cassie's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "I never thought I'd say those words again and mean them, but I do. I love you, Levi Sawyer." He leaned forward, hesitating just a breath away from her lips, giving her time to pull back if she wanted. But Cassie closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was tender and tentative at first, then deepening as they both gave in to the feelings they'd been holding back. When they finally parted, Levi rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "For real. Be my wife. Let me be a father to your child." "Yes," Cassie replied without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." They were married the following Sunday in Willow Creek's small church, with Frank Jensen and his wife as witnesses. Cassie wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Jensen had altered to accommodate her pregnancy, and Levi wore his best shirt, freshly laundered and pressed. It was a brief ceremony, but as they spoke their vows, both felt the weight and promise of the words they exchanged. Dr. Mitchell visited regularly as Cassie's time drew nearer. Her pregnancy progressed normally, he assured them, though he advised rest and cautioned that first births could be challenging. "You're both healthy," he said during one visit in late November as Cassie entered her 8th month. "And the baby seems strong. But given the isolation out here, I'd recommend moving into town for the last few weeks, just to be closer to help if needed. Levi and Cassie discussed this after the doctor left. "What do you think?" Levi asked. "We could take a room at the boarding house again." Cassie looked around the cabin that had become their home, at the cradle Levi had carefully crafted and placed beside their bed, at the curtains she had sewn for the windows. "I'd rather stay here," she said. "This is our home, Levi. I want our baby to be born here." "What if something goes wrong?" Levi asked, the fear evident in his voice. "What if you need the doctor and I can't get to town in time?" "Mrs. Jensen said she'd come stay with me when the time is near," Cassie reminded him. "And you heard Dr. Mitchell, I'm healthy, the baby's strong." Levi wasn't entirely convinced, but he respected Cassie's wishes. They compromised by arranging for Mrs. Jensen to move into the cabin 2 weeks before Cassie's expected time, and for one of the younger ranch hands to be ready to ride for the doctor at a moment's notice. Winter settled over Wyoming Territory, bringing snow that blanketed the landscape in pristine white. The ranch work slowed with the season, giving Levi more time at home with Cassie. They spent the cold evenings planning for the future, for the life they wanted to build together. "I was thinking," Levi said one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively over Cassie's swollen belly, "about where we might go after the baby's a bit older and the winter passes." Cassie murmured sleepily. "Silver Reef," Levi said. "I've been thinking about it more and more lately. The sheriff's brother, the mine owner I fought with, died this past summer. I heard it from one of the men who came through with the cattle drive. Typhoid took him." Cassie turned to face him, suddenly alert. "And the sheriff? Would he still be after you?" "Hard to say," Levi admitted. "But it's been over a year, and with his brother gone, maybe it's worth the risk. The land there is good, Cassie. We could build something real, something that's ours." Cassie considered this, her hand joining his on her belly. "I like the sound of that. Something that's ours." They fell asleep making plans, dreaming of red cliffs and a house with a view of the mountains, of a garden and maybe a few cattle of their own, of a life together that stretched far into the future. 3 days later, just as dawn was breaking, Cassie woke Levi with a hand on his shoulder. "It's time," she said simply. Levi was instantly alert, fear and excitement warring in his chest. "Are you sure? It's early yet." "I'm sure," Cassie replied, wincing as a contraction seized her. "The baby's coming." Levi scrambled out of bed, pulling on his clothes and boots. "I'll get Mrs. Jensen, then send for the doctor." "Hurry," Cassie whispered, her face contorting with another pain. Levi ran to the main house, the cold morning air burning his lungs. Mrs. Jensen was already awake, as if she'd sensed she would be needed. She gathered her things quickly and headed to the cabin while Levi roused young Tim, the ranch hand tasked with fetching the doctor. "Ride fast," Levi urged as Tim mounted up. "Tell Dr. Mitchell the baby's coming early." By the time Levi returned to the cabin, Mrs. Jensen had Cassie settled in bed, with clean sheets and towels at the ready. "It's progressing quickly," Mrs. Jensen told him as Cassie breathed through another contraction. "This little one's in a hurry. Too quickly." Levi asked, anxiety sharpening his voice. "Every birth has its own time," Mrs. Jensen replied diplomatically. "Cassie's strong. She'll do fine." The hours passed in a blur of pain and waiting. Levi paced the small cabin, venturing outside occasionally to scan the horizon for signs of Tim returning with the doctor. Mrs. Jensen remained calm throughout, coaching Cassie through each contraction, assuring her that everything was proceeding normally. By mid-morning, the contractions were coming fast and hard. Cassie's face was flushed with effort, her hair damp with sweat. "I need to push," she gasped during a brief respite between pains. Mrs. Jensen checked her and nodded. "The baby's ready. You can push with the next one." Levi moved to Cassie's side, taking her hand. "I'm here," he whispered. "You're doing so well, Cassie. So well." Cassie's grip on his hand tightened painfully as the next contraction hit. She bore down with a strength that amazed Levi, her face contorted with the effort. Again and again she pushed, each time bringing the baby closer to the world. "I can see the head," Mrs. Jensen announced. "Dark hair like its mama." Cassie managed a weak smile between pushes. "And it's Papa," she gasped, squeezing Levi's hand. With a final, tremendous effort, Cassie pushed once more, and suddenly the cabin was filled with the indignant cry of a newborn. "A boy!" Mrs. Jensen exclaimed, quickly wrapping the squalling infant in a clean towel. "A healthy baby boy." She placed the baby on Cassie's chest, and Levi watched in wonder as his wife gathered their son into her arms. The baby's cries softened as Cassie spoke to him, tears streaming down her face. "He's perfect," she whispered, looking up at Levi. "Look what we did." Levi's vision blurred with tears as he gazed at the tiny, red-faced infant. He wasn't Levi's by blood, but in that moment it didn't matter. This was his son, his family. "He's beautiful," Levi said, his voice thick with emotion, "just like his mother, Mrs." Jensen busied herself with the afterbirth and cleaning up, giving the new family a moment of privacy. Levi perched on the edge of the bed, one arm around Cassie's shoulders, the other hand gently touching the baby's downy head. "What should we call him?" Cassie asked. Levi considered for a moment. "What about Thomas?" he suggested softly. Cassie looked at him in surprise. "After?" "No," Levi said quickly, "after my father. He was a good man, gentle and strong, the kind of man I hope our son will become." Cassie's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Thomas," she repeated, testing the name. "Thomas Sawyer, I like it." "Thomas Levi Sawyer," Levi amended, "if that's all right with you." "It's perfect," Cassie agreed, smiling down at their son who had fallen asleep against her chest. "Hello, Thomas Levi Sawyer. Welcome to the world, Doctor." Mitchell arrived an hour later. Apologetic for the delay, a downed tree had blocked the road, forcing Tim to find an alternate route. He examined both mother and baby thoroughly, declaring them both in excellent health despite the early arrival. "You did well, Mrs. Sawyer," he told Cassie. "And you too, Mrs. Jensen. A textbook delivery by all accounts." "We had a good teacher in you, Doctor," Mrs. Jensen replied modestly. "Doctor." Mitchell stayed only long enough to ensure that Cassie was comfortable, and the baby was nursing well before heading back to town, promising to return in a few days to check on them again. The next weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and joyful discoveries as Levi and Cassie adjusted to life with their son. Thomas proved to be a good baby, fussy only when hungry or wet, and quick to settle in either parent's arms. Levi found himself marveling at the smallest details, the perfect miniature fingernails, the way Thomas's mouth formed a tiny O when he yawned, the surprisingly strong grip of his tiny hand around Levi's finger. "He looks like you," Cassie said one evening as Levi held Thomas while she ate her dinner. "Around the eyes." Levi looked down at the sleeping infant in his arms. "You think so?" Cassie nodded. "Mrs. Jensen said the same thing yesterday, said he's the spitting image of his papa." A warm feeling spread through Levi's chest. He knew Thomas wasn't his by blood, but in every way that mattered, this was his son. "Poor kid," he joked, though his voice was rough with emotion. Cassie set aside her plate and moved to sit beside him on their bed. "I was thinking," she said, leaning her head against his shoulder, "about Silver Reef." "What about it?" Levi asked, carefully shifting Thomas to his other arm. "I think we should go," Cassie said. "In the spring when Thomas is a bit older and the passes are clear." Levi looked at her in surprise. "You're sure? It's a long journey and with a baby." I'm sure, Cassie said firmly. You said it yourself, we could build something real there, something that's ours. She touched Thomas's cheek gently. Something for him. Levi nodded slowly. All right. Silver Reef it is. I'll talk to Jensen about staying through the winter, then we'll head south when the weather breaks. Frank Jensen was disappointed to hear of their plans to leave but understood. He even offered to sell them a wagon and team at a fair price when the time came. You've been a good hand, Sawyer, he said. Hate to lose you, but a man's got to do what's right for his family. The winter passed slowly, marked by the milestones of Thomas's growth, his first real smile, the way he began to focus on their faces, the strengthening of his neck as he learned to hold up his head. By February, he was a chubby, cheerful baby who delighted in the simple games Levi played with him. As promised, when spring arrived and the mountain passes cleared, Jensen sold them a sturdy wagon and a team of reliable mules. Levi spent 2 weeks outfitting it for the journey, building a small crib that could be secured inside for Thomas, packing their few possessions, and stocking up on supplies for the long trip south. The day of their departure dawned clear and mild, a perfect spring morning. Mrs. Jensen fussed over Thomas, tucking an extra blanket around him and pressing a small cloth doll she'd made into his tiny hands. For the journey, she said, blinking back tears. So he remembers his Wyoming family. Cassie hugged the older woman tightly. We won't forget you, she promised. Any of you. Levi shook hands with Frank Jensen, thanking him for everything. If you ever find yourself in Silver Reef, he said, you'll have a place to stay. I'll hold you to that, Jensen replied with a gruff laugh. Take care of that family of yours, Sawyer. I intend to, Levi said, his eyes moving to where Cassie stood with Thomas in her arms, the sun catching in her hair. They're my whole world. The journey south was long and sometimes difficult. They traveled slowly, stopping often for Thomas's sake, making camp early each evening to give him time to crawl and play outside the confines of the wagon. Cassie kept a journal of their travels, noting landmarks and Thomas's accomplishments alike. He rolled over today, she wrote one evening as they camped beside a small stream in Colorado. All by himself from his back to his belly. Levi missed it, but Thomas did it again just to show his papa. I've never seen Levi look so proud. They skirted the larger settlements, still cautious about drawing attention, but occasionally stopped in small towns to replenish supplies and allow Cassie and Thomas a night in a proper bed at a hotel or boarding house. In one such town, a tiny place called Redstone, they attended a Sunday service at the local church, where Thomas was properly baptized by a traveling preacher. Thomas Levi Sawyer, the preacher intoned as he sprinkled water on the baby's forehead. Child of God, son of Levi and Cassandra Sawyer. The word struck Levi with unexpected force. Here, in this simple ceremony, the last piece had fallen into place. They were a family in every sense, legally, spiritually, holy. As they continued south, the landscape changed, the rolling grasslands giving way to red rock formations and scrubby juniper. The air grew warmer, drier, and Levi found himself eagerly scanning the horizon for the familiar silhouette of the Silver Reef cliffs. We're almost there, he told Cassie one evening in late May, nearly 2 months after they'd left Wyoming. Maybe another week if the weather holds. Cassie looked up from where she was nursing Thomas, her eyes alight with anticipation. I can hardly believe it. After all this time, all these miles. Having second thoughts, Levi asked, suddenly uncertain. It's not too late to change our minds, head somewhere else. No, Cassie said firmly. No second thoughts. I want to see this place that means so much to you. I want to make it our home. The first glimpse of Silver Reef's distinctive cliffs brought a lump to Levi's throat. The town had grown since he'd left. New buildings lining the main street, the sound of the stamp mill a constant backdrop as they approached. "It's beautiful," Cassie said softly, taking in the red rock formations that gave the town its name. "Just like you described." They made camp outside town, and Levi rode in alone the next morning, needing to assess the situation before bringing Cassie and Thomas. He moved cautiously through the streets, alert for any sign of recognition or trouble, but the town was busy with miners and merchants who paid little attention to one more dusty traveler. The sheriff's office was his first stop. If there was still a warrant for his arrest, he needed to know before settling his family here. He approached with trepidation, half expecting to be recognized and clapped in irons on the spot. Instead, a young deputy he didn't recognize greeted him from behind the desk. "Help you, mister." "Looking for Sheriff Blackburn," Levi said cautiously. "Sheriff moved on about 6 months ago," the deputy informed him. "His brother's death hit him hard. Went back east somewhere. I'm Deputy Wells. Sheriff Collins is out on patrol, but he'll be back tomorrow if you need him." Relief washed over Levi. With both Blackburn brothers gone, the chances of anyone remembering his altercation with the mine owner were slim to none. "No need," he assured the deputy. "Just passing through, checking in." His next stop was the land office, where he inquired about available properties. To his surprise and delight, the very parcel he'd had his eye on, before leaving a stretch of good land a mile outside town with a year-round spring, was still unclaimed. "Not much call for farmland around here," the land agent explained. "Most folks want to be closer to the mines or right in town." Levi staked his claim on the spot, using most of their carefully saved money to secure the land and obtain the necessary materials to start building. By the time he returned to their camp, his face was split with a wide grin. "We got it," he told Cassie, scooping Thomas from her arms and spinning him around, making the baby squeal with delight. "The perfect spot, Cassie, just like I remembered, and no one in town even batted an eye at me." "The Blackburns are gone, both of them." Cassie's eyes filled with happy tears. "So we're really home. This is it, Levi confirmed, setting Thomas down to pull Cassie into his arms. "We're home." They moved to their land immediately, pitching their tent near the spring while Levi began work on a more permanent dwelling. The people of Silver Reef proved to be friendly and welcoming, especially once word spread that Levi was a skilled carpenter as well as a former miner. Offers of work came quickly, providing a steady income as they established themselves. Cassie, too, found her place in the community, her gentle manner and obvious devotion to Thomas winning her friends among the other young mothers in town. She sold her handwork delicate baby clothes and practical household linens at the general store for extra money. By Thomas's first birthday in December, they had a snug 2-room cabin with plans for expansion in the spring. Levi had started a small herd of cattle, just a dozen head, but it was a beginning. Cassie had planted a garden that yielded well despite the desert climate, thanks to the reliable water from their spring. They celebrated Christmas that year with a small tree cut from the hills and decorated with paper chains and strings of dried berries. Thomas was more interested in the colorful wrappings than the simple wooden toys Levi had carved for him, but his delight in the festivities was infectious. As they sat by the fire that night, Thomas sleeping contentedly in his crib, Levi reached for Cassie's hand. "Happy?" he asked simply. Cassie smiled, the firelight casting a warm glow on her face, a face that now showed no trace of the bruises and fear that had marked it when they first met. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied. "You saved me, Levi. You and Thomas, you gave me a life I never dared to dream of." Levi shook his head. "You saved yourself, Cassie. You were brave enough to run, brave enough to trust again." He squeezed her hand. We saved each other." Cassie leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "I've been thinking," she said after a moment. "A dangerous pastime," Levi teased. "I think we should expand the family," Cassie continued, ignoring his jest. "Thomas should have a brother or sister." Levi's heart skipped a beat. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Cassie looked up at him, her eyes dancing with joy. "I'm saying that come summer, Thomas won't be the only Sawyer baby in this house." Levi gathered her into his arms, happiness surging through him like a river breaking its banks. "I love you, Cassie Sawyer," he whispered against her hair. "I love you more than I have words to say." "Show me," Cassie replied, turning her face up to his. And he did. There in the warm glow of their hearth, in the home they had built together, with their son sleeping peacefully nearby and the promise of another child to come. He showed her with tender kisses and gentle hands, with whispered words of devotion and the solid strength of his embrace. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Levi thought back to that evening by the Sweetwater River, to the broken woman he had found among the reeds. How far they had come since then. How much they had overcome. "What are you thinking about?" Cassie murmured sleepily against his chest. "The river," Levi replied honestly. "Where we began." Cassie's arm tightened around him. "I was so afraid that night, afraid of Thomas, afraid of being alone, afraid of trusting you." "I know," Levi said. "You begged me to leave." "I'm glad you didn't listen," Cassie said, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. "I'm glad you're stubborn," Levi chuckled. "One of my many fine qualities. The first of many I came to love," Cassie agreed. She was quiet for a moment, then added, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me that night? If you'd taken a different trail or if I'd run in another direction?" "No," Levi said firmly. "Because I would have found you somehow. If not by that river, then somewhere else." "Some things are meant to be, Cassie. Some things are written in the stars before we even know to look for them." Cassie smiled against his skin. "I believe that," she whispered. "I believe we were always meant to find each other." As they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Levi sent up a silent prayer of thanks for rivers and chance encounters, for second chances and new beginnings, for the broken road that had led him to this moment, this woman, this life. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, bearing witness to the small cabin and the family sheltered within a family forged not by blood but by choice, by love, by the courage to begin again. And in the quiet darkness, their story continued to unfold one day at a time, one moment at a time together.